What's up guys, Matt here coming to you from Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson. So today I'm going to be going over the new Skyline OS for you guys on the new 24 model year. Road Glide, Street Glide, CVO, Road Glide, Street Glide, and even the 23 model year CVO, Road Glide, and Street Glide. So everything with basically this new Gen 3 body style on the Road Glide and the Street Glide. So they've got this big, huge 12.3-inch infotainment system now. All the gauges have been eliminated, as many of you guys know. We have all just kind of digital gauges, and we just have a lot more viewable area for things like media, GPS, which I think is really nice. And you've also got some options to customize your gauges to cruise mode, sport mode, tour mode, which I think is really cool with maps. So I'm gonna be jumping into what I feel like is the most important stuff. I'm not gonna get into some of the real technical nitty-gritty stuff. You guys can check out Harley-Davidson's YouTube channel. They have a playlist that shows like a lot of different of the small features to kind of tweak things. I'm just gonna focus on the stuff that I feel like is like the meat and potatoes of this new infotainment system. This is gonna be kind of like a quick start guide to get you guys going as fast as possible and to give you guys basically the knowledge on how to use the tools in here that are the most important stuff. So guys, let's start off first with the equipment that I have that I'm running right now. So I bought Harley-Davidson's Senna 50S, as they call it. So this is like the prior generation of headsets. Harley-Davidson has moved over to Cardo products now. I'll probably get one of those in the future, next headset I get, but I've only had this for about a year. It's a Harley-Davidson Senna. It works great on my bike right now. As many of you guys know, I have the CVO Road Glide ST. We're using a CVO Street Glide in the beautiful legendary orange. And so I'm gonna pair my headset. I'm gonna show you guys kind of the steps of doing that. So I'm gonna pair the headset and I'm gonna pair my phone as well. So I'm using an iPhone 15 Pro Max. I really recommend, guys, if I know there's a lot of guys that don't like Apple products, but with the new Apple CarPlay that you can use on these systems, I use that pretty much exclusively now. You can get away with using an Android, of course. You can use Harley-Davidson's embedded media player on here, and you can use the navigation. I'm gonna be going into that in just a second as well. Basically, the CVOs come with navigation from the factory. The non-CVO bikes, however, you have to pay $350 to get Harley-Davidson's embedded navigation. Of course, if you have an Apple iPhone and you wanna use just CarPlay 100% of the time, you'll never really need to buy that $350 embedded navigation if you have a non-CVO bike, because you can just use your maps, like your Apple Maps on Apple CarPlay. I like visually and navigating the menus and everything, Apple CarPlay, because I use it on my vehicle, my car, and my motorcycle, and so I'm just really familiar with it. I'm just used to it, and so I prefer that. Visually, I think it looks better as well. Harley-Davidson's maps are great, they work good, but I'm not gonna use them as much as Apple CarPlay. And so if you're kind of in between on phones and you're a real big Harley-Davidson enthusiast and you plan on spending a lot of time on a Harley-Davidson, I would kind of recommend getting just the Apple product. No, this is not a paid sponsorship by Apple, but I just feel like Apple CarPlay is so good that it might be worth it going to an Apple product. Plus you get the blue bubbles when you text as well. All right guys, so I'm gonna jump into this and give you a little bit of a tutorial. Like I said, kind of a quick start guide, and I'm gonna do everything in real time for the most part. I'm gonna try not to cut too much. What I'm doing to boot up the bike is I'm holding down this circular button in the top right-hand corner. By holding that down and not hitting ignition, I'm turning the bike into accessory mode, a little hack so you don't burn your battery as quickly. I've also got the bike hooked up to a trickle charger right now. I strongly urge you, if you're gonna be messing around with your infotainment system, learning it and stuff like that in your garage so you become accustomed to it, get a trickle charger, because an hour or two of messing around with the infotainment system, it's really gonna drain your battery, and the last thing you want is to go to start your bike up and have a dead battery. So accessory mode is what I'm using, hold that down. Okay, so we're now at our main menu screen. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna connect or Bluetooth my phone to the infotainment. So I'm gonna hit the menu button here, and then I'm gonna go to the little gear icon up here. On my phone, I'm gonna go to settings, okay? So settings, and then I'm gonna go to Bluetooth in my settings, and that way it's in like a discoverable mode so that my bike can discover my phone. So at the very top, it says Device Manager. I'm gonna click on the Device Manager. And I'm gonna click on Add New Device. So it's searching right now. Okay, so it popped up with Matt's iPhone. We have a whole bunch of devices right in this area that you can Bluetooth to. So Matt's iPhone, so I'm gonna click on that. Then I'm gonna watch my phone, okay? It's gonna say Bluetooth pairing request. I'm gonna hit pair to accept that request basically. On the screen, it will say accept or decline. It gives you a code there. I'm gonna accept that. Connection in progress. And this should Bluetooth with my phone. Okay, the device works with Apple CarPlay. Do you want to enable Apple CarPlay? That's very nice of you to ask. Yes, actually I would. But it's not going to work yet because I don't have a headset paired to this motorcycle. You got to have a headset paired and your phone as well. So here's a big thing that people have a problem with when they come in and say, hey Matt, my infotainment system's not working. So it'll say connect headset to use Apple CarPlay. So we're going to connect the headset in just a second here, but a lot of people will come in with their phone connected to their headset. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes I see. Disconnect your phone from your headset. You have to connect your phone to the infotainment system and then connect your headset to the infotainment system, okay? So the connection is not between these two devices. The connection is the phone to the bike and the headset to the bike. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna take my Senna 50S and I'm gonna put it into pairing mode or discoverable mode. Actually, to turn it on, I'm gonna press both of these at the same time. It says hello inside the helmet. It's gonna start up. This indicator here is gonna let me know how much battery life I have left. Now I'm gonna hold down this back button in the rear and I'm gonna start to see this light flash blue and red like this. That lets me know it's in pairing mode or it's now discoverable. So now what I'm gonna do, now that my headset's in discoverable mode, I'm gonna go down to add new device. So it's searching once again. Now it says HD Audio 550S. Perfect, that's mine right there, HD Audio 50S. I'm gonna click on that. It says pairing now. Perfect, so look, it's paired up now. So now I can see under my connected device list, my headset and my phone, okay? So those are the two things that have to be connected to use Apple CarPlay, and I know most people are probably gonna wanna use Apple CarPlay that have an Apple device. So now that I've got those both connected, this icon right here, you'll be able to click that. This is your Apple CarPlay icon right here. Okay, so if that doesn't work, like what's happening right now, I probably have to enable Apple CarPlay. So I'm gonna go back to my device manager. I'm gonna go to my phone. You can see a little Apple CarPlay logo that's not illuminated, so that's the problem. And then there's a button under here that says Start Apple CarPlay. So I'm gonna hit that Apple CarPlay. It's connecting. Okay, now you can see that Apple CarPlay has started because I now have the interface. That's the Apple CarPlay interface. I've got my music here. If you press this button right here, this is like the menu button. You can see all the apps you have on your phone that are Apple CarPlay compatible. Maps is probably one that's going to be utilized the most. Now I will say too, once Apple CarPlay is enabled, it moves your gauges to the left-hand side regardless of what mode you're in, and it uses probably about 65% of the screen for Apple CarPlay. That's the biggest question I get, guys, is how to get Apple CarPlay started. Here's another thing that I see happen a lot. Sometimes I'll start my bike, and as long as your headset is on and your phone is in your pocket or whatever, the bike should automatically just pair to both of those devices when the bike starts up or when the ignition comes on. What you might have to do sometimes, I'm gonna hit this menu button and go back to the main menu here. You might have to go in here into settings and go into your device manager. And before you start going down the road, is usually a good time to do this, just make sure that both of your devices are discovered and enabled. You can see Matt's iPhone, that Apple CarPlay logo is illuminated now. That lets you know that Apple CarPlay is active. But what happens is, and sometimes on my bike as well, I'll fire up my bike, my headset usually connects, no problem, as long as it's powered on. But my phone, I'll need to go in and I'll need to connect my phone manually. It doesn't always automatically connect. So just check that out when you start your bike. That's something that I see commonly an issue when people come in and they can't get their Apple CarPlay to work. It's because these two devices aren't connected properly to the bike. That's gonna fix 95% of your problems right there. So now let's go to navigation. We'll talk about that real quick. So the CVOs have the Harley-Davidson embedded navigation. So you can see I went to the navigation button, hit OK. Now I'm going to have my navigation in between these two gauges here. You can hit this magnifying glass here and you can look up addresses that way, where to. Go here, you can type it in. You can also do your HD ride planner online on your desktop computer, put it on a USB-C flash drive, and then insert that flash drive into your media port here, your USB-C media port here in your media drawer, and you can upload your routes off of Ride Planner and have them in here. So that's an option. Or like I said, you can just type in your address manually in here as well. There's points of interest like always. You've got gas stations, coffee shops, restaurants, things like that. That's the way you're gonna wanna navigate if you don't have Apple CarPlay. Now again, like I mentioned earlier, if you're not getting a CVO, when you go to the navigation, it's gonna pop up a QR code. You're gonna wanna scan that QR code with your cell phone. It's gonna take you to Harley-Davidson's website where you can purchase the Harley-Davidson embedded navigation for $350.
When you select the navigation icon and find it disabled, you'll be provided a QR code. Scan it to visit h-d.com/nav. Purchase the navigation feature, and further instructions will be provided.
Let's move over here to settings again. So here's a big one that I use quite a bit and toggle in between. So layouts. So just so you guys know where I went to, this is the main menu. You can always get back to the main menu by pressing this top left-hand corner button here. You go to the gear, that's your settings. I'm gonna go to display, and then layout. Layout is a big one. So you've got three different layouts. You've got the cruise, which is in right now, the sport, which is your single gauge that is in the center of the screen. And then you've got your nav on the left, or your media, and then on the right-hand side, you've got another menu I'll show you in just a minute. It's basically this menu right here with your trip A, trip B. Personally, guys, especially if you're using CarPlay, Apple CarPlay, I like to use the Sport. The reason why is I prefer that gauge because you've got a tach on the outside, and digitally you've got a numeric value for how fast you're going. It's a more information-rich gauge that if I'm only gonna have one gauge on the left-hand side, I prefer the Sport gauge. So if you're using Apple CarPlay, I prefer the Sport gauge. Touring, if you're gonna be using maps, non-Apple CarPlay, I prefer the touring mode. So if you're using Harley-Davidson's embedded navigation and you're touring around, you wanna know where you're going, tour mode is what I preferred. And then kind of in the middle, if you're cruising around, you've got a big speedometer and you have a tachometer on the right-hand side, and then you've got a menu right in the middle of the screen. Let's keep it on cruise for now, just for the sake of presentation here. I'm gonna go back to settings, hit the gear, sound, a couple things here, audio routing, this is really important. A lot of people will come in and say, hey Matt, I can't hear anything on my bike. You know, what's wrong? My speakers are blown up. Well, no, it's because you have your audio routed to your headset and you're not wearing a headset. So if your speakers aren't working and you don't want the audio to be routed to your helmet, make sure your media and music is routed to speakers. Prompts, that's going to be navigation prompts. I personally like to have navigation prompts routed to my headset because if I'm navigating a trip, I always have a headset on, so I have the speakers in my helmet. If you're not running a headset, you're going to want to make sure both of these are on speakers. That way you can actually hear it coming out of here, because if you don't have speakers in your headset, you know, in your helmet, if you don't have a headset in your helmet, there's nothing to project that sound, obviously. So that's important, that routing. You can also auto volume control. That's gonna be how much your volume changes based on riding conditions like speed. So if I have a 2 setting here or a 4 setting, that's gonna vary my volume drastically based on riding conditions, mostly how fast you're going. I don't like to do that because I don't like my volume changing up and down unless I'm doing it myself on my hand control here. So I personally like to shut that off. The rest of the stuff is equalizer, fader stuff, VOX. I'm not gonna cover that stuff. You guys can look at that later. Ride modes is a big one, guys. So ride modes, if they're not checked next to the ride mode, then by cycling with the mode button, nothing's gonna happen. If I've made a custom A mode, and I've edited that with the pencil icon here. So I'm gonna say yes, take the base settings of road mode. Okay, so these are all the different criteria that you can adjust when you're making a custom ride mode. You can dictate your engine braking, throttle response, traction control, anti-lock braking, all that stuff. I'm not going to go into that too much, but that's how you do a ride mode if you're interested in doing that. But you got to make sure that it's checked. Let's say you're a guy that, hey, I don't ride in the rain, I never want to use rain mode. You can uncheck rain mode, and that way when you're toggling with your mode button here, that will never be an option as you're toggling. I'm gonna leave that on right now. Sport is checked as well, and road is checked as well. So once I'm away from this menu, when I hit this menu button, it's gonna toggle between road, sport, and rain, because I don't have any custom modes set up right now at all. Okay, I'm gonna hit the back button here. So tuner, RBDS, that's basically the radio broadcasting service. So when you have the radio on, it will give you information about like what station you're on and things like that. Always have that on. I don't see why you wouldn't want to have that on. AM, FM radio, I'm gonna have those as well if I want to listen to that. Nowadays, I feel like most people are just streaming music from their phone and they're listening to AM and FM radio less and less, especially on your motorcycle. Phone here, you can do things like contacts, rip all your contacts out of your phone as long as your phone is Bluetoothed. So that's kind of convenient if you want to make a call out on the road or something like that. You can voice command as well, as long as you have the headset, of course. We're going to go back. I'm not going to go too far into that. Wi-Fi. This is basically allows your bike to connect to local Wi-Fi, so including like a cell phone. So if you have like a 5G, like a powerful enough Wi-Fi to your phone, you can connect the infotainment system to your Wi-Fi, and then the benefit of that is you're going to get like live traffic and weather updates. And that's all given to you basically through the embedded navigation. Once again, if you're using Apple CarPlay, you don't really need that because all that information is already in Apple Maps. But if you want weather and traffic on your embedded navigation, you're gonna have to connect it to use your phone as a personal hotspot. So I wanna show you guys kind of my workflow in terms of how I use the navigation. This is just my personal preference on how I use it. But like I mentioned, I always go Apple CarPlay. So I've got my Apple CarPlay going. I usually will use Apple Maps. Look at it's telling me to go to Chipotle because it knows it's lunchtime for me, so it's telling me to go to my favorite place right now. That's funny. Apple's way too smart. So what I'll do, I'll usually ride like this, guys, with my map out or my music app out. I use YouTube Music. What I love too is in the top right-hand corner of the left-hand control module, there's a toggle switch here. You got to hit menu first. So if you hit menu, it takes you out of Apple CarPlay, takes you back to the main menu. This tool or cluster of information here is pretty helpful actually. You toggle with this switch in the top right-hand corner of your left-hand control module. This has things like your tire pressure monitoring. You can see where your tire pressure is at. I look at this way too much just because it's such a good, valuable piece of information. If your tires are running low on air, they'll heat up, they'll wear unevenly, and worst case scenario, you'll have a blowout because you're running improper tire pressure. So tire pressure is super important, so I'm always toggling around that and checking that. This right here is the gauge you're gonna get if you're in cruise mode. I like the sport mode gauge, so I'm just gonna show you what that looks like real quick. I'm gonna go back to the gear. I'm gonna go to display, layout. I'm gonna go sport, boom. Now I've got my main menu here on the left-hand side, and if I go to my widgets here, it's on the right-hand side. Ride info, this is the widget that I really like a lot. On ride info, you've got the outside ambient air temperature, you have how many miles you have before you run out of gas, and here you've got your engine temp. So right now it shows 96. I find that these bikes with the new water-cooled heads and everything, they run at about, once you get them up to full operating temperature, about 225, 230. If you get much above that, you know your motor is getting hot and you should keep an eye on it. But I really like the ride info widget. So yeah, I'm just always swapping between Apple CarPlay, my maps, and then if I want to check my tire pressure or just see like the outside temperature, I hit menu and go straight over to ride info. You've also got your trip A, your trip B on here as well, and then your tire pressure monitoring, and then back to ride info. Ride info only shows up if you're in sport mode. I actually just discovered that. So in sport mode as well, like I mentioned, you have your miles per hour and a numeric digit in the center of your speedo, and you got RPM on the outside perimeter, fuel on the left, your volts on the right. So I personally like sport mode, guys. A couple other things real quick. You got a favorites menu here. You can program like your favorite radio stations and people to call. I'm not going to go into that. This right here is home link in the lower right hand corner. This is only applicable if you have a CVO, not the ST Road Glide. The CVO Road Glide ST does not have home link. So it's one of the things that you get with the CVO Road Glide and Street Glide non-ST version. You can program up to 3 different garage doors. What that does basically is you can open up your garage door with your home link when you get home instead of using your manual garage door opener. So that's kind of nice. Bike here, if you go to this bike icon, this allows you to lock, you hear that? Lock and unlock your saddlebags. Again, that's CVO only, non-ST version. The ST version does not have it. And here you can just turn your infotainment off completely if you want. I'll mention another thing, guys. If you do like additional lights, like fog lights or something like that on these bikes, in this bike menu here, you'll be able to turn that additional electronic equipment on. That does require a flash at your local service department. Once that's flashed, it sees that you have the additional equipment, like the fog lights, for example. There's one other that's a really common one. I can't remember it, but turning that stuff on and off will be on this menu, on your bike menu. This note right here, that's where you're gonna go if you're not using Apple CarPlay. You can come here, click the top, and you can click on Bluetooth right here. The Bluetooth logo will pop up, and then I'll be able to play my music. Like say I'm using Android, I'm not running a headset, I'm not using my Apple CarPlay, I'll be able to use Bluetooth there. Or you've got this USB connector here. So if I wanna put my phone in the media drawer here, if I have the proper USB-C cable, plug this in, keep my phone in here, it will charge, and I'll be able to play all the music off of it as well. So those are your options. I usually only plug my phone in if I need it to charge, otherwise it pretty much just stays in my pocket. I'm using Apple CarPlay personally. Well, that's about it, guys. Hopefully you learned something. Like I said, I just went through just like the real meat and potatoes of the infotainment system, stuff that I use on the daily. A lot of that other like small nitty-gritty menu stuff I don't use too much. If you want to fine-tune some of the other things like the equalizer, your bass, treble, all that stuff on the infotainment system, you can do that. But really the big thing is people just want to know how to pair up their headset and their phone, get going, listening to music, and they want to be able to navigate the ride. So if you guys have any questions, I'd love to try to help you out. This is one of those things that if you're not very tech savvy, you're coming into your dealer and it's usually like a quick, simple fix. And it's just kind of a waste of time and a headache for a lot of people. This is probably one of those things that I get more questions than anything. Once I sell a bike to someone, people coming back and asking me about these little tech things. So hopefully that helped you guys out. Any questions you may have, leave them in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. And if you're looking for a new or pre-owned motorcycle in Southern California, make sure you check us out here at Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson. We'll see you guys on the next one. Later.